All right, welcome to this week's TEALScript Weekly meeting. So much like we've done in the past, I'm going to start off going what has been done in the past week and then go over what's kind of on the table for the next week or so. And kind of just open it up for general Q&A, feedback, that sort of stuff. So let me share my screen. All right, so like I said, not a whole lot of changes in the past week. So last week, the big thing was v10, and I think 7.81 was where we ended the last update as of last meeting. So since then, there has been updates to how constants are resolved. And there's actually an existing bug where this needs to be changed again. The main problem is TypeScript itself doesn't keep track of constant arithmetic. So for example, like if you have like const x equals 3, the TypeScript compiler will know that the value is 3. But if you do like 3 plus 3, then it won't resolve as 6. It'll just resolve as a generic number. And so I implemented custom logic on top of the TypeScript interpreter to resolve constant arithmetic. But another bug was discovered involving integers. So if you tried to use arithmetic and it resulted in something larger than 2 to the 64, it would break because TypeScript itself doesn't support large numbers. So I basically kind of have to rework how constants are done in the compiler, but this shouldn't affect the way you write contracts. It'll just fix code that's currently broken.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So I think when I tried this might have been before your update. I made a constant of something like 100 plus globals.min balance, and that failed because I was using a global value rather than do you know if your update fixed that or if that is just a bug that I should probably report?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Kind of brings a wider topic. So like the initial change for the constants, I intentionally changed it so that constants had to be either a string literal or a numeric literal or like computed numeric. And the reason, so not supporting something like globals.min balance was intentional. And the main reason I did that is because of how the constant resolution works in TealScript is a bit different than TypeScript. And if, for example, you had like function calls in your constant, that function call would be evaluated each time that constant was actually used rather than just once at compile time. Now, I could do an update where it basically does. So when the compiler encounters a constant definition, it like saves it in scratch space, and then that's used throughout the program. But that ends up using a lot of scratch space. And so I think the solution I eventually want to get to is basically allow definition of anonymous functions, or just in general functions. Basically, the best way to describe it is like functions that are not part of the contract, but like evaluated as constants. Kind of similar to like how you can in PyTeal, you can define a function that returns a sequence and call it multiple times. But that's not actually like a subroutine, because right now every TypeScript method is a subroutine. So the idea is to come up with a way to define a function that isn't itself a subroutine. And the idea is that you limit the like call sub write sub opcode cost. But that has some unique challenges in terms of like variable scoping that needs a little bit more time to think about the best way to accomplish it. So that's kind of why I've erred on the side of, if you're defining a constant, it has to be a string literal, number literal, and if not, the compiler will complain about it. And as a side note, one of the things I want to do going forward is, I don't know if I'll get this done prior to 1.0 launch, but I want to basically, for every error that the TealScript compiler can throw, it'll link to the relevant docs. So if it throws an error about your constants, it'll link to the docs about constants and explain like why this error is happening and how you can fix it. So for now, that is not necessarily a bug. That was kind of an intentional change, even though it broke some code, but it guarantees like better alignment with how like TypeScript actually works.
Yeah, thanks. No, I think now that I understand it, you explained it, I get why it's doing it. So it was no problem. I just put my global value somewhere else. But
right. Yeah. Yep. So that was the update for constants. And then also there was a bug in for each. And basically I forgot to check there's basically some logic in the compiler that checks if the starting offset was 0, but I really should have been checking if it was undefined. And so like TealScript wouldn't be able to iterate over arrays that started at a 0 offset. So that has been fixed. Then also there's a bug fix for logic signatures. So like in applications, the first argument in your method is actually apparg1 because apparg0 is the method. And I was erroneously doing that for lsigs as well. So this just fixes the indexes that is used for logic arguments. 0.80, so this adds the v10 globals. So I think it's ASA create MBR, ASA opt-in MBR, and Genesis hash. Yeah. So that's a really nice change. I want to eventually convince JJ to kind of just put everything in the parameter tables exposed in Teal, because I feel like there's always edge cases where if developers don't have it, they're going to hard code something that might break eventually. But yeah, so that's...
By the way, Joe, side note, I am compiling a shopping list for the AVM on behalf of the Python community, so of the Python effort, sorry. I'll send it over your way if you have anything you want to add.
Sweet, yeah.
Let's do a unite front.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Yeah, and then this also... So this is something I have to fix the Teal docs, because I didn't fully understand that ITXN next and ITXN big or ITXN begin are actually different. So like when TealScript encounters like group transactions, you previously used ITXN begin for each transaction, but it actually needed to use begin for the first one and then next for all the other ones. So this 0.80 fixed that as well. And then 80.1 fixed a bug where if you try to get like so if you have a contract, you can do like contract.schema.global.int or .bytes. And this was just a bug fix. If you did .int, it would actually return the byte schema. So let's just fix that. And then finally, Patrick, one of the things he wanted me to add last week was the ability to call .length on a static array. And so I added that, but there was a bug where basically the array was pushed on the stack when it didn't need to be, because the static array can just be inferred from the type. So I fixed that. And then I also added support for bytes and generic. So previously, if you wanted to have like a static array of bytes that was 50 bytes long, you would do like static array byte 50. Now you can just write bytes 50 and that'll work the same. So yeah, that's all the changes that's happened in the last week. Like I said, nothing too major. Before we go on to the project table and talk about what's coming up, any questions or comments on the changes thus far? All right, so coming over to what's on the table in the near future. So this first one, this is the constant bug I was talking about. Right, it was larger than 2 to 53 minus 1, but that's max safe uint for JavaScript. So I got to update constants to work with big numbers. And then right now, the ECDSA opcodes encode the return value as a tuple. But when implementing AVM10, for all the multi-output opcodes, I just put each value in the frame. And so I want to update the ECDSA opcodes to do the same thing. I also, Kirby found a bug where like the method signature for the ECDSA opcodes say they expect a uint 256, but they actually take in a big int. So there's just like discrepancy in the implementation and the type. And then also this global state issue where you basically can't have max keys total to more than 64. So there needs to be a way to tell TealScript that you know that you might run out of schema and you know what you're doing. So find it acceptable. And I think that's it, other than this outstanding issue that's kind of blocked by the algod simulate update. And then, of course, documentation. This has if you want to see it, right now, basically all the major doc updates I'm doing in this branch. So if you want to see what the docs look like, you can come to this PR and take a look at the doc side here. The main thing I'm working on is updated guide section. And I think kind of the home base for like people that know Algorand and are coming to TealScript will be this page where you can like control F any opcode and it'll kind of explain how to use it. And eventually it'll link off to docs as well. So yeah, that is kind of what's on the roadmap. I already covered, like I said, not a whole lot new from last week. Any other topics, feature requests, questions, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, well, I have a question. So I've been running into this issue specifically related to like a contract to contract like method call. So I have like a parent and a child contract, and in the parent contract, I use send method call to basically trigger an opt-in to the child contract.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of stumped on this issue. So essentially, if I try to pass in like an inner payment as like a method args to the child contract, I get like fee error, and I haven't been able to work around it. But if I change the signature to not accept that inner payment, but instead I just send the payment before the method call, using the send payment function, then everything works as expected.
Right. Yeah, I do remember seeing that on Discord. Yeah, I forgot about that. I'll have to take a look. Yeah, I'll have to take a look and try to reproduce it. What would be helpful if you could, because it compiles, right? It's just during runtime that
Yeah.
Right. So if you could maybe just like copy the generated teal and put it in Discord that it generates when you compile.
Yeah.
And then I'll try to reproduce it. Yeah, I'm honestly not entirely sure what the problem might be, but yeah, I can look into it.
I can do that. Also, if it's easier, I created like a repo with like the branch. So if you wanted to see like,
Perfect. Yeah.
Cool. All right. I could just send that to you on Discord, or I linked it in the Gmail as well. But
oh, sweet. Okay. Yeah, I'll take a look at that because there was I did make some, like I said, like I did make some fixes to inner transactions, but I don't think that would have affected this bug.
Yeah, I just pulled the most recent and checked.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. All right. So I'm thinking of it, add this bug to the project. All right. Anything else? If not, I think we can wrap for today, and hopefully next week I'll have some updates on the constant stuff. And then I'm hoping by next week I'll also have made some good progress on the algod simulate fix, and which will hopefully give us a better timeline of 1.0. But yeah, that's it for today. Thanks everyone for joining, and hope to see you next week.